This episode contains spoilers for King Richard. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Cinephile Gamers podcast. I am your host, Bo Smith, and we are back on the Oscar train tonight, or day, or whenever you're listening to this. It doesn't matter. I'm just happy you're listening. And so today we are going to be covering King Richard. King Richard is directed by Reinaldo Marcus Green, and it stars Will Smith, Anjanou Ellis, Sania Sidney, and Demi Singleton, and John Bernthal. That's going to be a lot of cast of characters, and all are fantastic in this movie. More on that later, though. This movie is nominated for Best Picture, of course, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Film Editing, Original Screenplay, and Best Original Song. So it's one of those movies that has a lot more nominations than most others. I think the only other movies that are coming to mind that match that are Power of the Dog, and Don't Look Up only had 4. So yeah, King Richard's going to be one of the more higher nominated movies. And I gotta say, early on, just so you know my take on this, definitely deserves most of these nods. So let's get on to the movie. For those who don't know what King Richard is, it is the story of Serena and Venus Williams. Now, not quite. It is about their coming up into fame, but it's about the man behind them all, their dad, Richard. Now, Richard Williams is a man who is very down on his luck, very poor, but does not let that bother him. He is a very loving father, loving husband who wants the best for his family. And so he's going to ensure that they get the attention that they deserve and that they do not struggle like he did. And so with his two daughters, Venus and Serena Williams, he wants them to learn how to play tennis and wants them to become eventual tennis stars. That way they don't have to struggle for money and they can succeed in their field while also bringing representation to a sport that is predominantly white. Now, going into this movie, I don't know a lot about the background of Serena and Venus Williams, so I was very interested to see their upcoming and upbringing in their early life in the 90s in Compton. So it's neat to see how they came about, and I hope most of this is true and not just exaggerated for truth, because a lot of elements in this movie are really good, and I was always cheering on. First off, I've got to say, with Will Smith, fantastic job in this role. He wants the best for his girls and for them to be the best at their talents. And that's something that, of course, is always admirable, but you really see him drive it home in this movie. And also, one thing I didn't know about the Williams family is that Venus and Serena had sisters, 3 other sisters. So he had 5 girls growing up. And I'm kind of curious to know where they are now. In fact, after I finish recording this episode, I'm probably going to look up what happened to the rest of them as well. But it's really neat to see how, even though the other 3 are not tennis players, that they are still supportive of their sisters and their tennis careers, while they also have great skills in other things too. But back more on Will Smith, let's go ahead and take a look at his character in this movie, because he is absolutely fantastic. And I mean, while we're at, let's just go into each of the best of categories that this movie was nominated for, starting with Best Actor. Will Smith is really good in this movie, and I really hope he wins the Oscar for Best Actor. He deserves it. He's had a long career in film and TV, and he's just one of those all-around good guys that seems to do no harm in like just day-to-day life. He's a very likable person, really respected in the acting world as well. I mean, he's been nominated twice before, once for Ali, the other was for Pursuit of Happiness. So hopefully with King Richard, he receives the Best Actor award for this. Anjanou Ellis is nominated for Best Supporting Actress, and I have to say, did a really good job in this role as the rock to both Richard Williams and as the rock to the family as well. There's a scene that happens later on in the movie. I won't necessarily spoil it right now, but they get into a heated argument over a couple things. And you know how whenever they do here are the nominees for so-and-so category, whenever it gets to her, I'm sure it's going to play that scene where it has the argument, because it is a very emotional scene. Really kind of got me choked up as well, because you can tell her heart is in this. It looks like an actual married couple fighting and just showing that, hey, I want the best for this family as well, so don't tell me I'm not doing my job right either. Film editing, I also had it marked off as really good. I think it's very concise, consistent film editing. Some of the shots of their tennis matches are really good too. Original screenplay is marked high up on there. I think this can go toe-to-toe with the likes of Don't Look Up as well. It's of course, whenever you're dealing with a true historical story, it's going to be something that you have to get right, or else the movie just crumbles. And this movie does really well in its strengths of retelling the story of Venus and Serena Williams. Original song is called "Be Alive" by Beyonce. It's okay. I'm not a huge Beyonce fan. I like some of her work, but I think she's a little overhyped. And I'm looking around because the Queen Bee fans are going to be knocking down my door whenever I say that. But I mean, it's No Time to Die by Billie Eilish. I think that's going to be the clear winner, since it's a James Bond film, and the music and the main theme of James Bond movies are always really good. So yeah, those are what is nominated for, including Best Picture, and I'll get to my final score later on for Best Picture. Now let's kind of go into some of the more details of the movie, what I really liked about this movie. Of course, I mentioned Will Smith and how he wants the best for his girls and for them to be the best at their talents. And you know what? He kind of reminds me of my dad. He gets something in his mind and doesn't let go of it. Like right at the beginning of the movie, he was talking about how whenever he's trying to find a coach initially to coach his daughters, he's just like, I saw this man playing tennis and I learned that he made $40,000 just playing for a week. And he said, I got to teach my girls tennis. And once he gets something in his head, he doesn't let go. In fact, he learns the game of tennis really well. Even though he's not someone who played at all in his previous life, I mean, he is someone who really studies the game, knows the forms, knows who's hot and who's not right now in the tennis world. And so it's very respectable. Like I said, it kind of reminds me of my dad, how he gets something in his head, he really studies something. So I like drawing the comparisons of that. Made me connect with that character a little bit more. And I love the chemistry of the family in this movie. I mean, everyone from the sisters to Serena and Venus, and the mom and the dad in this movie, really good interaction with each other. You just always cheer for this family. Like, these girls are going to win. They're going to be the best tennis players in the world in the future, but you're always cheering them on. Like whenever they finally land their first coach, like Mackenzie started getting choked up. She's like, I'm so happy for them. And you kind of feel that way. You're just like, good for these girls. They really deserve it. Will Smith's positivity is super infectious in this movie. It's kind of that Will Smith role where he just is a little bit goofy, but I mean, he has a serious tone to his character moments as well. But he's always smiling in this movie. He's always cracking jokes with the kids or the tennis coaches, and it's just so fun to watch him in this movie. There's a few times in this movie where he does make racial jokes, both on white and black people. It can be a little unsettling at first because you're like, nervous laughter right now. But they do land a lot of the time. In fact, one of my favorite jokes is whenever they get invited on one of the nicer tennis courts, he said, "We're glad that you're not wearing your white hoods right now." And I nearly spit out my drink thinking, oh gosh, he really went there. That's interesting. And you know that he really cares for his family. Once the girls do start getting into playing some of the bigger matches, he sits them down and makes them watch Cinderella. And he's like, okay, what did we learn from this movie? And the girls are just spouting off answers. And he's like, these are all wrong. And I want you to be serious. We're watching this movie again. I'm like, why are we watching this hour-and-a-half movie again? He says, the girl is humble always. You need to remember, even though you're good at this game and you might beat these other girls, you got to remain humble. I'm glad that he teaches that lesson early on. But I will say, and this is kind of an interesting character development, he's kind of a hypocrite himself because he is absolutely stubborn and not humble whenever it comes to his personal life. Like I mentioned before, he grew up poor in Louisiana. He mentions in a couple times that if it wasn't the KKK that was chasing him, it was other gang members that were chasing him. And he felt like he earned no one's respect. And so he's always trying to earn respect through his girls. And he's just very stubborn in that way. While he wants to be told that, yeah, he built something great for these girls, he's not very humble about it either whenever it comes to wanting better coaches, better money deals, or anything else that comes later on in the movie. And just because the movie is called King Richard and focuses on the dad's story and how he brings these girls up, you can't forget about the two main tennis stars that came from him, Serena and Venus Williams. And so let's talk a little bit about these girls. The ladies that played these characters, Sania Sidney, she played Venus in the movie, and Demi Singleton played Serena. And apparently they learned how to play tennis for this movie. It is not, there might be some body swaps and I didn't notice, but these girls actually learned how to play tennis and they played really well. And it shows during the movie. There are some intense scenes. And of course, you know, much like a basketball movie or a football movie that you see sports biographies on, some of the stuff is staged in a way to make it favorable or unfavorable for their outcomes. But whenever you see a longer shot play out, they are actually playing hard and it shows. And I don't know if you have ever tried to play tennis before. I tried it a little bit in college, just hanging out with friends, but it's not easy. Whenever I started swinging, I was like, okay, yeah, I can easily do this one-handed. No, you got to use both hands a lot of the times because your wrist wears out after a while. And these two young girls, they are swinging it with one hand. And I'm like, man, that has to be killing their wrist. So props to Sania and Demi for their role in this movie. You know what? I think these girls are going to have a great career ahead of them. And I wish they could have gotten nominated for Best Supporting Actress as well, because they are absolutely fantastic in this movie too. Now, I want to go ahead and get into the later details of the movie, and spoilers ahead for the later half of the movie. I know these are real people, and you can easily look up their careers on Wikipedia, but I'm going to go into the details of the movie specifically. So, after they have found a coach, of course, he only wants to take one of them, and he's not even getting paid for this. He is doing it because he wants to build up Venus Williams' talent. So he takes Venus and decides to continue to coach her and put her in some games. And eventually Will Smith decides to take her out and was just like, I don't want her to be stressed out. I don't want her to get burnt out like some of these professional players are doing. So we're going to not enter her into any more junior league games. And the coach is like, well, you're going to have to if you want her to be a professional. And so he's just like, well, I guess we're done here, or we appreciate your help. And so the search is on for another coach. And this is where John Bernthal's character comes in and becomes the second tennis coach. So Richard throughout the movie is a very good negotiator, and he's also very persistent. So he continually calls John's character out and sends him videos, and he even gets him to come out to Compton from Miami, Florida. It wasn't Miami. No. Anyways, he gets him to come out from Florida to Compton to watch these girls play. And he goes, yeah, I am definitely interested, and here is my fee for everything. And he's like, I'm not going to charge you unless they get sponsorships or they win certain games and they get prize money from it. And so Richard goes, okay, well, here's my negotiation too. And we're going to move down to Florida, all of the family, and we are going to be working at your club as well. And we are going to need this help as well. And he's like, well, I guess I can't say no because these two are going to be great players. So he signs the deal with Richard and they all move down to Florida. And this is when Richard announces to him, once they finally get settled in at Florida, by the way, we're not putting them in any junior league games at all. We don't want them to get burnt out. And then John's like, this is kind of a blind side. I don't know if I can really go for this. And he's just like, look, just let them continue to train and the time will come where we put them in a game. And so 4 years pass, I believe about 3 to 4 years pass. And these girls are tennis pros. I mean, even at this club that they are at, they are so skilled in what they do, but they still have not entered a single junior league game. And so there's no growth into becoming a professional. And this leads to nearly a fallout between the parents and between the coach, between Richard. And so eventually Venus comes to her dad and is just like, I want to play. I don't want to be on the sidelines anymore. I'm not going to be able to grow if I don't play. So Richard finally gives in and they sign her up for a tournament. And it's in this tournament that she goes up against some of the best junior league players in the world. And I mean, right off the bat, she is nearly knocked out of the first round of the tournament, and it struggles, but she, digs down deep and ends up winning it all. And it's a huge deal for him. And then that's when John Berthal's connection with the Nike reps come in, and they're like, hey, we want to offer you a deal because, I mean, Venus has been getting a lot of coverage over the last couple of years anyways, just because of some of the tournaments she had entered in previously. And so Nike comes in and says, we want to make a deal for $2 million that we want to pay you. And Richard goes, I'm not going to be the one that makes this girl's call. And so Venus decides, and she says, no, I'm not going to do it. At this point, John, who has invested so many years in Venus and Serena, is just like, I'm not going to see a single cent of this money. And you can see like how exasperated he is by it. After the first game, though, whenever she does win, they come back and up the offer to like $3 million. And she still says no because she wants to show what she can do in this tournament. Well, the very next round, it is going to be against the number 1 seed of the Junior League Championship. Or not championship, but of the world. And Venus just dominates for most of the match. And it's not until in the later part of the match that the girl goes off and takes just this long break. There's no rule against it either, which I thought was very interesting, and just essentially ices Venus. And so she comes back, and it comes down to the final moments, and Venus does not end up winning. Something I didn't really see happening because I thought, it's Venus Williams. She can do anything. And so in the locker room, she is crying that she lost. And then both Richard and his wife go in there, and he's like, why are you crying? You just played your heart out against the number 1 seed in this entire tournament. So if you aren't proud about that, I don't know what's going to make you proud. And so they leave, and the rest of the family is there, and they're cheering her on. They're like, we are so proud of you for what you've done. They exit the stadium, and there's this whole group of kids and adults just outside lining up and celebrating Venus's even lost, but they are just so floored by her performance. They're like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of good things to come. And she walks out of there, and that's when the movie kind of goes into those final credits. But a couple of things that I kind of overlooked too is Serena, she kind of does take a back seat in this movie too. There's at one point when they're still in California playing tournaments on their own that a parent goes up. He goes, yeah, your kid's doing really well today. And Richard goes, yeah, she's just finding her groove right now. And he's like, I'm not talking about Venus. I'm talking about your other one. I didn't know you had 2 professionals. And Serena, you see, is just winning these matches on her own in her own age division. And so they both come out of that tournament with trophies, which is so funny to me that they just both dominated at such an early age. And later on in the movie, it still focuses mostly on Venus's career, which I kind of thought was weird because, in modern day and age, you hear a lot about Serena Williams over Venus Williams, or at least in my opinion, whenever I do see news about tennis. And there's a small scene right before one of the main matches or one of the last matches of the game that Serena is just kind of bummed out that she's not playing in this tournament. And Richard comes up to her and he's like, look, Venus is going to be a great player, but you're going to be the best to ever play. And I thought that was just kind of really funny on the nose because, yeah, Serena Williams, I think, has more wins over Venus, even though Venus was the first to really break onto the scene. And so as the movie ends, it kind of gives that black screen with the white text popping up of what happens next. And the crazy thing to me is it talked about, yeah, Venus lost this game, but 6 months later, she signed a deal with Nike at the age of 15 for $12 million. And that is just wild to me that at 15 years old, this little black girl is able to achieve this life-changing money, and then obviously goes on to have such a successful career. And then followed up by that, it talked about how she won these tournaments, and then Serena comes on, and it's like, And while Venus won this, Serena became the best player to ever play the game. And so it just fulfilled Richard's promise to her that she is going to be the best to ever play. And then it shows, of course, their later career and just them playing. But it also shows the VHS tapes that they recorded early on in the movie, the actual footage that Richard had recorded of his girls playing and practicing, as well as their promotional material to try to find and attract coaches to, which I thought, that's such a nice touch. I love it when real accurate or real historical movies do that sort of thing. So you kind of get some context and you're like, oh, yeah, this is nearly kind of shot for shot of what happened. And that's so cool. And not only that, but then whenever it shows their later career, it shows the two sisters playing against each other and then afterwards just hugging and holding trophies together. And then it shows their dad who's in the crowd and gets to be a part of it too. And to my knowledge, he is still alive to this day right now and has so many wins under his belt just as a coach. Like, he has continued to coach these girls. And it's just such a happy, heartwarming story. And I really enjoy the message of how their representation will inspire other young black kids to participate in the sport and other sports that, might be underrepresented for different cultures. So just a good message to hammer home as well. So what do I think of this movie? If you can't tell by the tone of my voice and how much I'm gushing over this movie, I really, really like this movie. It has some of the best acting in it. I love the character development in this movie. I love just the story overall. I think this is a really strong contender for Best Picture. I'd be interested to see some of these other movies and how it fares up with the others. But out of the 3 Oscar movies I've watched so far, yeah, this to me takes the cake as the best one. So I'm going to give this movie a 9.5 out of 10. Something that you should definitely watch and should definitely buy on Blu-ray, 4K, whatever device that you have that it can play movies that you can own. Because this is a solid movie, a very good, heartwarming movie that's going to really tug at your heartstrings at times and something that you always return to watch. So I'm curious to know what you guys thought of the movie. If you're interested in having these types of discussions with me, make sure to follow me on these podcasts, and you can also subscribe to my Patreon. That's right, we have a Patreon now, and you can go to patreon.com/CinephileGamersPodcast. And if you subscribe to one of the tiers, you get Discord access where we can talk about movies and video games as well, both on Oscars as well as some other films that have recently come out or some films in the past that might be good recommendations for other. And if your comment's really good, I'd like to feature on the podcast as well. So I'm going to end it off with something Mackenzie had said that I thought was really fun to include on here. We should have the confidence to turn down a $3 million contract because a $12 million contract might be around the corner. Thank you again for joining me, guys. You have a wonderful day. Can't wait to see you on the next podcast.